Right folks, this video is all about inequality, which you can kind of watch at any point in the module, to be perfectly honest with you, because it fits into most of Changing Places, and actually it fits into quite a lot of geography generally. So yeah, watch this whenever you want to. Now, if I teach you, hopefully you will have access to this PowerPoint and therefore you can open these hyperlinks. But if I don't, you're very welcome to just message me and I can send you access so that the hyperlinks are live. This one at the top is about a 3-minute introduction to inequality in the UK, which is quite interesting. I don't think it really says anything different to what I'm going to tell you, but it just gives you an alternative. This one I am going to open. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole thing because you can watch that in your own time. But if you, you can either obviously use the hyperlink in the PowerPoint, or you can just Google Life of Privileged Explained in a $100 Race. It's very American because it's made in America, so that shouldn't really surprise us. But it explains inequality in a way that kind of seems to make sense to lots of people. So it's a really, really good idea to watch that one. Life of Privilege Explained in a $100 Race. It kind of gets it across to you, yeah, better than I think I'm probably capable of. Now, the year in which I'm making this video, 2021, inequality begins on page 43 of the module and kind of carries on from there. And it starts with a definition. So I'll tell you, inequality is the extent to which there are differences between groups in society. Inequality is the extent to which there are differences between groups in society. So we need a definition, but it's also useful in geography to have a fact or a figure to kind of back that up, if you like. And on page 44, there are some facts and figures that you could use. One of them, the one that kind of sticks in my head pretty well, is the third one actually. The 100 wealthiest people in the UK today have as much money as the poorest 18 million. And if you just stop to think about that for a moment, it's sort of quite mind-boggling. Or the other option is to think about this. So you could compare the richest person in the UK, which currently, as of the latest figures, is from 2020, and it is Sir James Dyson. So Sir James Dyson and family, of the vacuum cleaner, hand dryer, etc. fame, £16.2 billion. Okay, so that's one end of the scale. And then we have this, food banks, places that people have to go if they can't afford to feed themselves and their families. In the last 5 years, food bank use in our network has increased by 74%. So we've got, that's inequality in a nutshell to me. We've got one family with £16.2 billion, and then we've got massively increased use of food banks in recent years in the UK. So you need a definition, the differences between groups in society, and you need a fact or a figure, okay? And that kind of kicks us off. For the more visual among us, it's just quite useful. You don't have to draw these, it just might help your brain understand what we mean. So there's this, the gap, if you like, between the haves and have-nots. You can look at it as a kind of wealth scale. Few people have lots of money, lots of people have very little money. I really like this one. This really helps my brain, and it kind of picks up on the key message in the Life of Privilege in a $100 Race video. The idea that we're all going along this thing called life, and obviously people want to be as successful as they can be in life, however you want to define success. That's very individual, but people want to be successful. And some people kind of get to take the escalator and sort of cruise through life reasonably easily, and some people basically have to rock climb, and it's an uphill struggle right from the beginning. That's a really famous photograph of inequality in Brazil, with the middle class housing right next to the favelas. So there is definitely inequality. This year we focus actually on inequality within the UK. All right, I've actually summed it up here. Whereas next year we tend to have a slightly different focus, and we look at the inequality between different countries. We do a module called Development in an African Context, and we really have a look at differences between levels of development and what that means. But just to introduce that to you, because I think it really does help get across the idea of inequality. The kind of modern way, increasingly, to look at inequality is with qualitative data. Now, qualitative data means it's not numbers, it's the qualities of something. Quantitative, think quantity, it's an amount, it's a number. And in geography, we like to measure things with numbers, it's kind of what we do. But we're increasingly realising that sometimes inequality is best shown in a qualitative way. So these photographs are of different children's bedrooms around the world, and immediately you get a sense of massive inequality between these children. That one is, in my opinion, slightly alarming, I have to say. But you can see massive inequality, can't you, between those? And on an even bigger scale, this is a website that I could waste hours, well, I don't even know if waste is the right word, I could use hours and hours and hours. Dollar Street is a project, it's a photograph and video project to try and show different people's lives around the world. So the web address is pretty easy, as you can see, gapminder.org/Dollar Street. And you can look at all sorts of things. Look, you can look at their toys, you can look at their bedrooms, you can look at how they do, you can look at teeth and, in fact, how they brush their teeth. You can look at what their hairbrush looks like. You can look at where they sleep. House, kids, Look, honestly, you can look at almost anything, ladies and gents, and you can see how varied it is around the world. So that, if you've got a bit of time or if you're interested, that would sort of introduce quite nicely the idea of inequality between countries. But whether you're thinking about within the UK or between countries, it doesn't really matter. Inequality is inequality. The definition, which I will read to you again, the extent to which there are differences between groups, inequality is inequality. But in year one, we are interested within the UK. Because, so I know I come back to this model all the time, and I do, because it explains so much. So we know that there has been decline of the primary sector in the UK due to mechanisation and the fact it's difficult, dangerous, low paid, not very popular. We know that we've had an industrial revolution in the UK, but we've now had de-industrialisation, where our factories have been closing because they've been moving abroad to other places thanks to globalisation. And both of these situations have led to the spiral of decline, which in itself causes lots and lots of problems. And one of those problems is inequality, because of course some people lose their jobs, but not everybody. So the people who lose their jobs, their lives tend to sort of get worse, and they have less money, and everything kind of goes downhill. But the people who are not affected by those job losses don't have those problems, and that is one explanation for where inequality comes from. Okay, so it does very much link to this module. Now, the kind of most important thing I would say is to know how we measure inequality, because you are probably familiar with the idea that in geography, the short questions are often resource based. They could give you a photograph, a table, a pie chart, a line graph, a table of numbers, a map. They do like to give you resources, which you then are asked questions about. And there are two resources that they could give you about inequality. One of them is the Gini coefficient, which is a number, and one of them is a Lorenz curve, which is a graph. Okay, so this is all in your module booklet, and I'm sure you will go through this in your lessons, but I will attempt to explain them both to you. Okay, so the Gini coefficient is a number or a percentage, and it doesn't matter actually how it's presented. What you need to know is, what do the numbers mean? Is a low number good or is a low number bad? Well, if you will accept that inequality is a bad thing, and I will endeavour to press that idea to you in a bit, if you will accept that inequality is a bad thing, then more inequality is bad. So high numbers are bad and low numbers are good for the Gini coefficient. So to show you a couple of resources, here is a line graph where we have time along the x-axis and we have the Gini coefficient on the y-axis, and we can see that the Gini coefficient in the UK was rising. I did try to find a more up-to-date one and couldn't, I'm afraid, but I'm pretty sure that in the last 5 years the only way is going to be up. The pandemic has absolutely, most definitely increased inequality. So yeah, the Gini coefficient's been going up. That's bad. That means the inequality in the UK is rising. Okay, so that's not a good graph, I'm afraid. Or they could show you maybe sort of more slightly a year 2 bias. They could show you different countries. And here, remember, high numbers are bad. So South Africa has got the greatest inequality, which is a bad thing, and Slovakia has got the lowest amount of inequality. And the UK is unfortunately towards the bad end of that graph. Lorenz curves look like this, and you hopefully will go through this in your lessons in a lot more detail, but pages 44 to 47 in your module booklet have got some really nice examples. So if you make sure you have the module booklet open in front of you as I try to explain this, that should help you quite a lot. Right, the thing you have to remember with Lorenz curves is that the diagonal line represents perfect equality, which is something that nobody in the world has in terms of where they live. That would mean that every single person has exactly the same amount of money. So that it's a myth, it doesn't exist, okay? So the diagonal line is everyone has the same amount of money. The further the actual line is from the diagonal, the worse the inequality is. So this is a little bit unequal, this is quite unequal, and this is absolute inequality. So that would be one person has everything and nobody else has anything. So luckily we don't have that either. All the countries of the world are sort of somewhere between these representations. This, I appreciate, is a graph that's between countries, but it's the best one that I could show you. So remember, the diagonal line is perfect equality. Everyone has equal money. So that would mean that Bangladesh has a little bit of inequality, but not as much as the UK. But the worst actually of these three countries is Brazil. Brazil has the greatest amount because it's the furthest away from there. Now to read them, you will need something with a straight edge. So I am going to attempt to show you something, but please remember that I am not I am not using a ruler. So if you get something with a straight edge, So you find 40%, come up to the Bangladesh line and come out to the y-axis. What this is telling you is that 40% of people have about 23% of the money. If we come up to 80%, oh gosh, not having a ruler is hard. You will do a better job. Whereas 80% of the people have about 60% of the money. And obviously, if you've got something with a straight edge, you're going to be more accurate than me. So you just read them like you would really any other graph. But by reading them, you could actually compare. So if I change colour a second, if I go for blue, so if I want to find out what the situation is for the UK, 40% of the people have about 14% of the money, and 80% of the people have about 52% of the money. So we can see already the graph is proving to us that there is more inequality in the UK than there is in Bangladesh. All right, so that's that. Then, hopefully, you will watch this in class. If you haven't, this is the thing I really need you to watch, okay? And I'm going to open the hyperlink so you can see what you need to be looking for. Okay, that's the one you need to be looking for. It's a TED talk and it's by Richard Wilkinson, and it's about how economic inequality harms societies. It's only 16 minutes of your life. It's not going to take too long, and it will really help you understand why inequality is a problem. Okay, so please take the time to watch that. Really important. And then we do need to sort of think about inequality and thoughts about it. And this year there is a little space on page 48 of your module for a few little thoughts, a few little notes about these kinds of things. We can all be a little bit blinkered, I think, to inequality, but actually what Richard Wilkinson says in the video, and he proves to you over and over again, is that actually the UK is one of the worst countries in the world for inequality. It is all around us. And we probably think that that's quite normal because it's all around us, but globally it isn't actually. So as I say, you must watch the Richard Wilkinson talk because it will really help you. And actually when you start looking for it, it's everywhere. You might notice, for example, more homeless people having to beg for food and money on the streets. You might sort of become more aware of people who seemingly have, I don't know, more money, nicer things than you can own, and all of those things. Inequality is all around you. The third bullet point, how it might cause social problems, the answer to that comes entirely from Richard Wilkinson's video. So how would we tackle it? Well, again, he does talk about this in the video, but essentially there are three options. One of them is you can go for the Japanese way of doing things, which is where people have relatively similar salaries. Not the same salary, but reasonably similar salaries. So regardless of the job you do, there's not a huge difference in how much money you earn. That you may like that idea, you may not like that idea. The other option is the Scandinavian way, which is people earn quite different amounts of money, but the wealthy are taxed really quite heavily. So they use the money from the taxes of the rich people to pay to help out those on lower incomes, with help with childcare, help with benefits, help with all sorts of things, which we do to a certain extent in the UK, but nowhere near as much as they do in Scandinavia. Or the option that is available to all of us, which is, I call it redistribution of wealth. It's the idea that if life is going pretty well for you, then maybe you could help other people out by donating a bit more money to charity, by buying a homeless person a meal, you know, those kinds of things, little bits that all of us can do really to try and tackle inequality. as ever, if you think about the global governance module, really, to tackle this properly, we would need something done at the top. We need, big decisions made, but they're difficult, they're political, they're unlikely to happen with certain politicians. So in a way, it's back down to individual actions and things like that. That brings us, and I'm not going to say very much at all, to tackling inequality. Now, I've decided to teach inequality within the deindustrialisation and spiral of decline part of the module, but remember, you can learn about inequality at any point really, but I will just mention this. If we have a problem that we learn about in geography, what we then do is we say, okay, what are we doing about it? What's the response? What's the management? How are we tackling this problem? In the decline of the primary sector, it was rural rebranding. In the decline of the secondary sector, it's government help for deindustrialised areas. Okay, so it's got a bit of a strange name. And you have a choice. You can either look at Toyota, which is a Japanese car company that has located a factory in Derby, and I've put all sorts of information there for you. Or, a little bit closer to home, you can do Hinkley Point Power Station, which is helping to tackle the spiral of decline in Bridgewater. So either of those case studies works equally well. And it links back to inequality because, of course, the idea is that if the government can help areas affected by deindustrialisation, we might be able to reduce some of the inequality. Anything that helps people on lower incomes to earn more money and have a better quality of life, that will also be tackling inequality. Okay, that's it for that one.